evening. It's 6 o'clock, and it is March 10th of 2025. This is the Stoughton Plan Commission meeting. We do have a quorum, and we are in certified in compliance with open meeting laws. And then we're going to skip over the minutes. Those will be at the next meeting. So we'll go right to the council representative report. Alderperson Caravello.
Thank you. It looks like at the February 11th council meeting, Ordinance 2 of 2025 and Ordinance 3 of 2025 were both approved. And at the February 25th meeting, Resolution 19 of 2025 was approved.
All right, thank you. And then the next item is number 6 is a conditional use permit for an apartment project located, it's on Main Street, I forget the address. Is it one?
Nope, we've got the Kettle Park West.
Oh, per 78-105, parent G3, forward development. And this one has a need for a public hearing. Before we do that, do you want to give an overview? Do I have the right document up here?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Okay, so you guys all recognize this because it was at the last meeting. The CSM was pushed through up to council, and then it was asked that the conditional use permit come back. Do you guys, are you okay if I skip over the overview and just give you my recommendations and then the developer is here, so, let's see. Okay, so number 1, when we're reviewing the report from Michael Stacy, the previous zoning administrator, they're asking that the parkland requirements be met. That's number 1. I'm gonna paraphrase. I can read all of it if you'd like me to, but number 2, the developer needs to have the landscaping plan that meets the minimum landscaping ratio of 50%. Additionally, a buffer yard should be provided along the rear of the property line between the multifamily and commercial. The district requires a minimum street frontage of 100 feet. The CSM is being amended to meet these minimum requirements. This needs to be approved, and it was approved, but it also needs to be filed prior to us issuing anything. The site plan meets the minimum requirements of the building envelope setback. An as-built survey should be required to confirm setbacks after construction for our records. This needs to be provided prior to final occupancy. Number 5 is just making sure that they're meeting the minimum parking requirements and minimum parking flow requirements. I can read through that, but thank you. Okay. Number 6 is the outdoor dumpster enclosures and mechanical equipment are not shown on the plans and needed to be added. Number 7 is bicycle parking is not identified. Number 8 is lot coverage needs to be reviewed and approved prior to, and this includes stormwater. It needs to go through the engineering and all of that stuff. Without internal plans, it's unknown the minimum floor space is being met. The developer did send me a lot of these requirements. I've been very busy. I haven't had time to even go in and amend it, and I'll let them talk to this information. That was number 9. Let's see. Number 10 is it looks like the original requirements had an emergency access in the rear through the adjacent lot. This all needs to be recorded. We need to see that in place. Number 11 is there is a space for a community garden on the plans, and it needs to be approved with these requirements. I know that they were basically, and I'll let them speak more to it with the community garden. They were saying, well, it's just more of a space, but if it's not, they need to meet these requirements, and we can just file it with this conditional use permit if that's the direction that they're going to go. Number 12 is the facade for the multifamily residential has not been provided, and this just needs to meet one of the following criteria, which I can look at when we receive approval of engineering, building inspection, fire inspection, and other city departments. And number 14 is any other conditions identified by city staff or the Plan Commission. For reference, I included the MR zoning with this so that they have it because, as you guys know, sometimes when stuff gets approved, it does take a while to get up on Muni Code. We do have some of those available right now, but it's always good to have it with the information. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Connor.
Yeah, thank you very much. Connor with Ford Development Group. I think the major thing to just point out with the items that were pointed out here would be that when the conditional use came forward last time, it was accompanied by the site plan. And as we're going through and trying to get the approval updated for the conditional use permit, the detailed site plan isn't included alongside of it. The information I was able to provide to Chris last week showed where the dumpsters were, what those details look like, where the bike parking was located. It depicted with the new MR zoning district, the update, there's usable square footage requirements. We're able to show that we meet those usable square foot requirements. There's a question about the emergency access, which we would have that easement recorded on the rear of the true hotel site to make sure we're meeting that as well. And then the community garden one, it really is intended just to be used by residents, so maybe that term could be updated to a resident garden. That way there's not the implication that people can come from anywhere and use it, but more of just an on-site amenity. And then the previous site plan did include the residential building facade renderings. So all that information was previously provided, just not in this most recent submittal as we're going for an update. So I guess let us know if you have any questions on that, but I think it's reasonable for the staff to review that, and if an item no longer meets MR zoning, to let us know and we can update the plan, or I guess, yeah, their review would provide to make sure that we're meeting those requirements. But happy to answer any questions about the current plans or the conditional use permit.
All right, are there any questions from commissioners before we close and open for the public hearing? Hearing none, okay, we'll go into the public hearing. Nobody was signed up to speak. Is there anyone out in the audience that wants to speak? Seeing none, we'll open it for our regular order of business here. So your recommendation, did you want to, was that pretty much everything that you covered?
Yeah, this is what I can do. Just maybe more for record, and you don't necessarily have to be here, is when I can review it, the site plan, and I can bring it into you guys and tell you my findings. If there's something that's not right on them, I mean, obviously I'll let you guys know, but I know that you guys looked at this. This is your second time around looking at this, correct? Because, yes. So I think I saw the plans and I went through briefly with the updated plans, and it did look like everything was taken care of. If it's not, I want to get it to Mark Fisher, of course, and our internal stuff, and get it reviewed and approved. But
all right, are there any questions? Commissioner Bradford?
Just want to know where we're at with the parkland dedication.
Sure. So we're having what I'm going to call a holistic conversation about future developments along Oak Opening and the pond. There's a variety of issues that we're trying to resolve. One of them is the parkland dedication. Another one is deed restrictions that are currently placed on 8 lots. Another one is access to 138. So we've been having conversations with Forward Development Group, with staff, with some of the neighbors that live out there about potential options. We're having another internal meeting on Friday to go through some things, and then we intend on meeting with Forward Development Group again, and we would anticipate that once we conclude those conversations that we'll be back. I think we'll be here and the council. Is that the plan?
so the plan is to take the information along with this conditional use on the 25th to the Common Council. So it will be at Common Council with Parkland, but that's number one requirement on the CUP, so nothing can get issued until that's resolved.
Yeah. So we're looking at the parkland. We're looking at possibly a certified survey map to move the potential pathway of a future road that Oak Opening might extend down to 138, and all sorts of things that we think are all positive. But we have to get it to the council, and some of that will come through here though, won't it? Like the CSM, does that come?
Oh, yeah, the CSM, but if you guys want, what I can do, I'd like it to go to council, because it's gonna be their decision because of stuff that has already been approved, right? They're gonna have to look at it, but after it gets approved, I can bring it back to you guys for informational, if you'd like. Does that work?
Yes.
We've been back and forth on whether it was gonna be money in lieu or actual land, where the land was gonna be, had changed a couple times. So
Yeah, the council
that's where I'm
preferred,
looking for some clarity. I mean,
The-
is it gonna be parkland?
yes, when
Okay.
we went to council the last time, the council preferred the parkland, and they weren't in a position to dedicate it at the time, and it kind of stalled out there, and that's why we had to get the extension, and we're having these conversations now. I think I think really the emphasis right now is to get the parkland itself dedicated, and we have some options to do that. So I think we'll get there. And like I said, there's a real broad conversation, and everything's kind of intermingled, but I think that it seems like there's all the pieces to the puzzle are there, and I think we can put this thing together.
I will bring it back to you guys as just informational, so you're aware.
Any other questions? Okay, that might involve a replat too, right? I was just thinking about that. Probably.
I think we can do a CSM.
Yeah, but I think some of the lots have changed too for the single family, and yeah, so we'll have to look at that when we talk Friday. So you might get a look at that as well. Any other questions? Otherwise, I would entertain the motion for the conditional use permit. There's a resolution in the packet.
I'll move to approve to council.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Tillerson. One last chance for discussion. Commissioner Farrell?
Do we have a date? Because this is extended, right? This extending it. So should there be a date in the motion for the record?
We can add a date. It actually references, hang on. So
They get a year.
they
don't
have 365, so 1 year from the CSM approval, which would be on March 25th. And I can add that into, okay.
Okay.
I'll change the CSM then and have that added in with the, yeah.
All right, anything else? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. Okay, now I'll get to the next item is conditional use permit for indoor lodging located at 144 East Main Street. This one also will have a need for a public hearing. Do you want to review this one?
So I wrote this one up a little bit differently. And so do you guys want to get up and talk about it first then, or how would you like to do it?
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Ray Pfeiffer, my business partner Ben Brubaker, and I own 144 East Main Street. Probably the simplest way to approach this is just to summarize what we're trying to do now, and that is we're doing a historic renovation. We bought the building almost 2 years ago now. At the time, it had an apartment upstairs, and our intention is to convert that apartment upstairs into a short-term dwelling unit. So, you know, for visitors, 1 night, 2 night, a week, that type of an apartment. First floor will be commercial, so typical of our neighbors. And yep, we're doing a historic renovation. I don't know if there's any other overview details that we could share with you, but that is our desire.
All right, anything you want to add, Director Munce-Pritchard?
So this has kind of gone back and forth on what was getting approved here. So what they're suggesting is what I'm recommending on there with the second floor residential. Do you want me to read through my planner's report recommendations? Okay. So the inn in the past that were approved were based solely on the second floor. The user could switch between a permanent residence or a temporary rental and not affect the integrity of the zoning district or the comprehensive plan. Originally, they were looking at a boutique hotel or inn, which would fit the category of central business, but the issue is the first 25 feet basically have to be commercial, and I did get a ruling from Rick on that as well. So right now, and this is what it sounds like they're doing, is I've recommended that the second floor be completed first. The applicant can return for an amendment to the conditional use permit if and when they decide to expand it into an actual inn. So that's number one. Number two is commercial building code. Compliance must be necessary for the changes of use with the additional units. However, it is not necessary to begin the city review process for a CUP. If commercial building code compliance is required, the applicant may start construction and occupancy of the single unit on the second floor pending building permit approval. If they decide to change it, they just need to come in and amend it with the CUP. Detailed plans are number 3, and it's stating the same thing, again, because of the 24 feet. Number 4 is the applicant is required to comply with commercial building code if it is met. Number 5 is there's no parking requirements within the central business district. Number 6 is any proposed signs will require a permit before installing. Number 7 and number 8 are approval of engineering, building inspector, fire inspector, and any other departments, and then any other conditions identified by Plan Commission or city staff.
All right, are there any questions before we go into the public hearing on this one? Commissioner Farrell?
I might be a little slow tonight, but what, the paper talks about first floor being different than what the applicant just said, so that's changed from what we're looking at. Okay, all right, just because I read through here and I was.
Yep, that was changed
Okay.
based on conversations that we had.
Okay, so the first floor now is just going to be all commercial.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'm trying to leave with a recommendation. The door's open if they want to go through additional changes. They'd have to come in and, just amend the conditional use permit
Yeah.
there, so.
But I think right now that your focus is on the upstairs, is that,
That's right.
okay. Any other questions before we go into public hearing? Hearing none, close the regular meeting, open it for public hearing. Once again, nobody signed up, nobody here to speak, so we'll reopen for our business. And I'm looking to see if there's a resolution in here.
There is a resolution. I don't know if it got into the packet, but there is one for council.
Okay. It might be on the next page here, and it's not coming up for me.
No,
No,
but I know it
Yes.
has one.
yeah. Yeah, so what we're looking to do is to make a recommendation to approve this at the city council. Is anybody willing to make that motion? Okay, a motion by Bradford, is there a second?
Jordan, second.
All right, any discussion?
These are with planners' recommendations, correct? Okay.
Yeah. No, we're just gonna ignore you tonight.
Well, that's fine. I was thinking, you guys did it on the last one too, like that, right?
This is how we work together in the office all day long. All right, any discussion on this one? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Next item, number 8, another conditional use for multiplex and apartments over 10 units per 78-105, parent G, 3A on 2801 Bluegrass Drive. And what do we have for this one?
I don't know why it's off center.
That's okay, I'll fix it. That's the least I can do for giving you a hard time. I'll get it set up here for you. All right, and there it is. Okay.
Okay, so I have the developers here tonight. They're the last guys in the audience, so know who they are. This one is time sensitive. It's going to be at council tomorrow night. So this is a conditional use permit. Complete plans weren't brought in, so I am going to have it come back for a site plan approval with you guys at a later date. But this is just the issuing of the conditional use permit, okay? So this is a development on Lot 5, which is part of the 51 West. The lot is 3.7 acres and sits on the corner of Bluegrass Drive and Oak Opening Drive. When it was originally approved, it was approved through the MR24 with the over flexibility for, I think it was multiple buildings on a lot, allowing principal structure separation of 20 feet, minimum rear setback of 40 where it was 50, and then a higher unit count per acre, which is why we're going away from that, if you guys remember. So at the December 10th, 2024 council meeting, the MR24 and MR10 were consolidated into one district, because you guys went through that for 5 meetings, and I appreciate that. So per the ordinance, any property currently zoned MR10 or any MR24 shall be zoned as MR beginning effective of the date of ordinance. The applicants were given the choice to either amend the approval of the MR24 with the plan development, which was approved on through Ordinance 16, 2021, or request a conditional use permit under the current zoning code, the new zoning code. The developer has chosen to ask for a CUP under the MR zoning code. So they're looking for a conditional use permit for 120 units of multifamily residential. The proposed site includes 2 buildings, parking, green space, etc. So, planner's recommendations. Number 1, to clean up the language of the original zoning and new MR zoning district. It's required the plan development with the plan development district, which is viewed as an overlay district, shall be repealed from Lot 5. This will clean up any confusion. If it's not, I can go into more detail, but I wanted to add this just so that there's no confusion. But if it's not being applied, it would go away within a year of when it was issued. The same way that, people have to come back for new zoning code. Minimum street frontage is 25 feet from the right-of-way property line. This includes the building, porches, points of egress. The setback needs to be adjusted to meet the minimum requirements. Maximum building height for a principal structure is 45 feet or 3 stories. The plans call for a 3-story building, but the height isn't included. Number 4 is the development needs to have a landscaping plan, and then it goes into landscaping plan requirements. Number 5 is the outdoor dumpster enclosures and mechanical equipment are not shown and they need to be put on the plans. Number 6 is the bike racks are not identified. Number 7 is lot coverage. You guys are okay that I'm paraphrasing this, right? Thanks. Number 8 is without internal plans, it's unknown if the minimum usable floor space is met in the units. This just needs to be provided. Number 9 is the facade requirements. They need to meet 3 of the minimum requirements of the facade. Number 10 is, did I skip a section? Maybe not.
I think so.
Okay. If I did, I apologize. Number 10 is approval of engineering, building inspection, fire inspection, and city departments. And number 11 is any other conditions identified by city staff. So what's going to happen here is we're going to, and feel free to object or tell me what you want, but we're going to go ahead and approve the conditional use permit. We'll then later on get in plans. It'll go through the internal review and then come back to you guys for a site plan approval at that time. So that's the direction that we want to go, but we want to assign the conditional use permit. And we do have these minimum requirements that have to be met, so approval with these conditions. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay.
Okay. Anything the developers want to add before we go into the public hearing? Okay. Yeah, we appreciate you being here. Any questions from commissioners before we go into public hearing? Alderperson Maskey.
As part of the 25-foot setback, Chris, I'm looking at this site plan, or what we want to call this.
Mm-hmm.
What is the terrace width on Wild Goose Drive?
I honestly don't know off the top of my head. You know, and
It's just, I know this isn't to scale,
yeah,
but it's looking mighty thin.
okay. Yeah, can we add that as one of the conditions then?
Yes.
Okay.
Any follow-up?
No.
That's it? All right, anybody else? Okay, we'll close the meeting, open for public hearing. Nobody signed up for this one, so we'll go back into our regular business. Anything come up during that quick public hearing?
I just asked that if you guys recommend that you add in the, under number 2, meeting minimum terrace requirements per Tom's.
I would request that.
All right. So there is a resolution, we would add that to the resolution. Anybody prepared to make a motion on the resolution for the conditional use permit? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Majewski. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. Thanks for being here. Yep, have a good night. You bet. Item number 9, ordinance adding section 51 re-inspections. So this is something new for us, isn't it?
It is.
You're-
And I gotta find it in the pile of stuff. Okay, so, this is something I pulled over from my previous job in Whitewater. We use what were called re-inspection fees, and so what that would do is when we have a piece of property that maybe when we write citations isn't quite getting to the crux of it, we can then write re-inspection fees against the property that is having the violations. I don't foresee us using this as much as I used it in other cities, but I can think of like maybe 2 instances in the last year, which I found out I've been here a year as of like this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I can only think of 2 instances that we would have used this, but it's nice to have. And so I would like to get it updated in our ordinance. And if you guys have any questions or concerns, I can go into more detail on that. But it was tested when I was in my other city.
All right. Commissioner Bradford.
Is this like for new builds where you go in to inspect, or is this?
No, so like.
What actual properties are we talking about?
Yeah, so I'll use this very hypothetically, right? So like,
Right.
let's say we have a landowner and it could be public or, you know, commercial or single family or anything.
Okay.
And they are repeated violators of like
Minimum maintenance, is that?
minimum maintenance. I mean, I'm talking like repeated violators. And I know that I have been in finance. I have come into finance meetings where they were like, we have tickets old enough to vote. So essentially the way that this works is we would write a reinspection fee against the property, and then the property, it goes on their tax roll.
Would this cover landlords, rentals?
Yes, it has. And so,
Amen.
yeah, so normally, I don't know how much I want to talk about this publicly.
And you don't need to. I
Okay.
just wanted to know which properties it included, because
It's dealing directly with the actual property and not necessarily like who lives there. We're dealing with the property owner.
With the owner.
Yes, yes. So that, and then like if the property owner comes back to us and is like, well, it's not my job to mow, that's a civil matter between him and his tenant, not the city. You guys all know where I came from, so this was clearly tested a lot, so.
All right. Any questions on this one before we go into the public hearing? Hearing none, same routine, open for the public hearing. The room is empty. So we'll go back into our regular business. So this one here is an ordinance. So if it gets recommended to the city council, it'll be there twice. So if there's something that you think could be improved between now and the first meeting in April at council, feel free to reach out to Chris and we can add that. The council can do the same thing in between their meetings. But otherwise, we're looking for a motion to recommend this ordinance to council. Motion by Bradford, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Schumacher. All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. Next item, number 10, is ordinance for section 10-4 building permit fees. Go ahead while I try to send her this thing.
So this is a really simple one. It was requested by our new building inspector, and essentially what it is like, normally you're supposed to have projects finished within a year. The way that our ordinance reads right now is that if it's not finished or something happens, they have to essentially reapply for the same permit, and this allows the building inspector to extend that permit with a minimal fee. So, and this was recommended by the building inspector. So that's what this essentially is. Does that make sense? So like, let's say you have somebody that is working on a project and it extends past the 12 months, like let's say weather, supplies, all of that fun stuff that all of us know too well, and it goes 14 months instead of the 12, it's giving the inspector the leniency to just extend the permit, where before it wasn't really written like that. We might have done it, but
I have a question.
Go ahead, I do too.
Sorry, y'all. Yeah. So is that fee like a monthly fee until they complete, or is it a one-time fee and you give them another 12 months? How does it work?
it's a one-time fee, but it's not like they can keep extending it every 12 months. It's up to the discretion of the building inspector, I believe. And I wrote this, I seriously wrote this like 2 months ago. So, and then it went through like Rick. But the language I plagiarized from Sun Prairie, which is where she came from, and she was like, "This, it works." So, do you want me to look into like a sunset clause on those? Is that what you're asking? Okay.
Yeah, my question was related to how much discretion the building inspector would have, because oftentimes what happens is they pull the permit and it's like 5 years later and it seems like the project's not completed, and we all have probably seen some of those properties. So does this give her the tool or the discretion to provide the incentive or motivate them to get those projects done sooner than later?
Well, and it does say, so number 1, and number 2 and number 3, it actually won't extend past 24 months. So
what happens at 24 months?
well, we could probably start applying the reinspection fee if it's not completed,
Okay.
which that's that one. That's
The
the
other
one that we just
Okay,
passed.
no,
So-
that makes sense, because that's kind of the biggest complaint we get, is somebody starts a project and then
Doesn't
who
finish
knows,
it.
we've had some where they ran out of money, somebody passed away. I mean, there's all sorts of things that can happen, and I think we're reasonable, but if it's somebody that's capable and they're just not proceeding on a timely manner, especially if they have scaffolding and things like that, it's kind of an eyesore. So.
And that was my question was, you know, I had somebody in my neighborhood who had scaffolding up for almost 2 years. So, you know, at some point, people need to get a little motivated, and so that's where I'm looking at the cash component, because, I mean, once you do it, yes, everybody, we have supply issues over COVID and all that kind of thing, but most projects, unless they're huge, don't
Well, and it does say, so in the event that the work for which the permit was issued is not completed within 24 months for a 1 and 2 family dwelling unit, or within 1 year for construction or work authorized by a valid permit issued under the chapter, then such permit shall lapse and be void, and no construction or work shall begin or resume until a new permit is obtained and the fee is paid. No permit shall be reissued until all approval requirement by this chapter at the time of the reapplication has been given. The fee for reinstating of a permit shall be 1/2 required fee at the time of reapplication unless work has proceeded without a permit under a lapse permit, in which event full fee shall be paid. So.
Okay. Sounds pretty thorough to me, with a few legalisms put in for good measure. Any questions before we go into public hearing? Hearing none, we'll close, go into public hearing. Nobody's here. Reopen for our business. I would entertain a motion for this ordinance, same routine as the last one.
Jordan, I'll make a motion.
Motion by Tilson.
Well, before we go to there, what
Okay.
about the question regarding the sunset? How are you going to approve this and then look back at the sunset?
Well, that was what I read on number 3.
It's already in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, never mind.
All right, so I have a motion by Tilson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Making me nervous. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, motion carries. Number 11, another ordinance. This one relates to building regulations and construction standards. That sounds like a building inspector one too.
It's heavily themed. This one, I didn't even write this one up. Shar did it for me. There was a change in code number. That's all this is. So you can see where it was crossed out and then the new code referenced. It's housekeeping, for lack of a better way of saying it.
Okay. Any questions before we go into the public hearing? We're in the public hearing. Nobody's here. We'll reopen for our business. Entertain a motion for this ordinance.
Move to approve the council.
All right, is there a second?
Tilson, second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? That motion carries. Number 12 is a repeal. That's why we see all these red lines, I guess.
Yes.
All right, what are we repealing here?
So you guys know the history on this better than I do. So this went to the Landmarks Commission first for recommendation to repeal this language in the zoning area. I actually didn't print it out because all it is a repeal per what was apparently a long discussion, and then I believe you guys thought it had been repealed, is my understanding. So we're going through the motions of this. You guys could probably tell me way more of the history about this than.
So what happened was the Landmarks Commission went through, I don't know, I'm going to say a 2-year process where they hired a consultant to update our design guidelines. And then after they did that, it was determined that we should do a downtown district instead of an overlay district. So when we had an overlay district, what happened was we had 2 ordinances. We had this chapter 78 and we had chapter 38, which is the historical preservation ordinance. And at that time, if the building was in the downtown and if it was contributing or was eligible or if it was a local landmark, then the landmarks would review the certificate of appropriateness for the design guidelines and approve the addition, remodel, what have you, on those buildings. If it was a non-contributing building, I believe it came here. Am I getting this right so far, Tom? You've been here through the long haul. And I think what happened is when the council approved all that, somehow this never got repealed at that time. And we've been operating under the Chapter 38, and it came up a couple months ago when we were reviewing a certain Alder's property on Main Street, and it was discovered that, oh, that should have went to landmarks, and it ended up going there too, so it was all good at the end. But we wanted to get this cleaned up. Anything you guys want to add? That's kind of the Reader's Digest history.
So now we have the division. That was supposed to be there all along.
Yeah, Chapter 38 was updated a couple, 3 years ago. I think Jordan was part of that process as well, because he had a few businesses that he owned downtown. It was a little controversial, but we got through it. We haven't really had any major issues with the ordinance. So right now, if somebody in the downtown district wants to do anything to the exterior of the building, they all go to landmarks, which makes the job here better, and it creates more work for the landmarks, and they've welcomed to that work. There are design guidelines for non-contributing buildings as well, so whether it went to landmarks or continued to come here, we were going to use the same design guidelines anyway, but it was determined that it would just be more efficient if one group looked at everything in the downtown district. So, any questions before we go into a public hearing on this one? Hearing none, we're in the public hearing. Nobody's here to speak, so we'll close it. We'll reopen it. I'd look for a motion to repeal this Chapter 78.
Move to repeal.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Caravello. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? One opposed. There's one in every crowd. Oh, all right. That motion does carry though. And that takes us to last but not least, and the moment you've been waiting for, is the Pocket Neighborhood Overlay District. And thanks to Chris, she put in a lot of work on this one.
Okay, I did give you guys a choice to get out of this if you want tonight. We don't have a lot of stuff on the agenda for the next meeting, but this went a lot faster than I thought it was going to go, to be honest with you. So that's great news for everyone. So, I can go through this. I put together a PowerPoint for you guys. I kind of went through section by section. Seriously, if you guys are getting burnout, you just need to tell me. We can pin it, but let's go ahead and go through some of this, and yeah. Okay, so this is the Pocket Neighborhood Overlay District. The purpose of the Pocket Neighborhood Community Development Design encourages a sense of community. I'm going to paraphrase a lot of this. So it promotes a variety of house choices to meet the needs of the population, diversity in age, income, household component, individual needs, special small houses with a maximum of 2 unrelated, encourage affordable housing with variety of designs, encourage and create of a more usable open space for the residents of the development through flexibility and density and lot standards, maximizing residents and pedestrian-oriented outdoor spaces and minimizing the impact of automobile traffic and parking, provide a more compact residence, and then towards natural landscaping and preserve open space. So I know that I really paraphrased through that, but that's essentially what we're going through. So in this area, we have essentially 3 definitions. We have Pocket Neighborhood Cluster, or cluster is a cluster group of 4 to 12 dwelling oriented around a common open space. There's the Pocket Neighborhood Community Development, multiple pocket neighborhoods clustered and porches fronting the dwelling into larger yada yada. There's some really big words in that. I know I wrote this, but I don't remember. So it's like, wow. And just obviously I wrote this several years ago, and then I came back and Rick and I went through it probably what was like 4 or 5 months ago, right?
Yeah, there was a conversation at the RDA.
Yeah. Yep, and
That's
then.
when it came.
Yep, and then we've gone through, and there's been a couple of really small tweaks. I know that we talked about it, and then I went through and I was like, I want this worded a little bit better, so that was another one. And then the common space, which is the central space used by the occupants of a pocket neighborhood cluster. The common space area may include, and then it goes through a list. And then 10 and slopes of 10% or less development and maintained, so it is usable active space. So in other words, the only, like, somebody's like, oh, there's the usable space and it's a giant detention pond with no real, usable space. So, okay, so the development configurations. Interestingly, the photos on the left, the left are from areas in our current ordinance. I pulled that down. I'm trying to make it more so you can start seeing some of those other elements in it. Development configurations of a pocket neighborhood development shall be pocket neighborhood clusters or cluster developments. A cluster development is a resident, and it goes into it with the configuration and whatnot. So this is kind of just that broad overview, and it is in the ordinance this way. And if you guys see something, feel free to just jump in and tell me, like, so I can get it marked on our ordinance where you guys want it. Here's the approval process. Approval of a cluster subdivision or condominium plat shall follow the general procedure of a subdivision, except that the Plan Commission may approve waivers and exemptions to such require as provided in this section. Cluster developments are allowed in all zoning districts in which residential development is allowed by right, subject to compliance with this section. The final design will need to follow section 78-908, which is a site plan review and approval process.
So if I were to translate that, this is its own ordinance, but yet there would be flexibility to seek similar types of exceptions that you would in a planned development?
So right now what it is an overlay district essentially.
Okay.
So what you have is you're going to have a residential district and you're like, I want to apply this overlay, so you'd have to come in, ask for a zoning amendment with this overlay district attached to it. And then we spell out what's required in this overlay district pretty stringently. So in other words, if you're like, oh, I'm going to do this because I want flexibilities, and then you come in and you're like, well, I only want 2 feet instead of 5. No, that's not how this works. You're applying the zoning overlay district, and then that's what you have to follow in these overlay districts. And really what we're looking at for this area is, I would say, 2 things. We could have new developments, of course, but I think areas with infill, as long as we can meet minimum requirements, like we still need to meet frontage. We have all of those other requirements that we're going to meet. And I am hoping that if this, I mean, are you okay if I talk about with the, if we end up using this, I could see us using it for infill for, say, like Habitat for Humanity. We've had some interest in. So we could have some kind of neat stuff go on if anybody applies to it.
There's a few examples that we found where there's some unused area or underutilized areas that we think this might be a fit. We've also had conversations about with land trust organizations, nonprofits, and that's another opportunity that we might want to pursue, because there was some grant money that Dane County provided. They're going through the process right now to understand what their rules will be. It took them a couple years to get the rules established for the money that they gave the Habitat, but I've been told that since their rules are established, it'll be a lot more efficient to establish the rules for the land trust. So we're hoping that to circle back with that organization and have a conversation and show them some properties that we think might be appropriate for this type of development.
So when we go down to the next one, we've got permitted uses, and this is what's permitted in that district. We've got 1 family detached, 2 family dwelling units, row houses or townhouses, community buildings, and then the temporary real estate, which I'm not going to read through that. That's pretty standardized within our ordinance. Vehicle community parking areas or garages, home occupation as long as it's doesn't create customer in and out, non-family household are limited to 2 unrelated. Conditional use in the district includes public and semi-public uses, including, so this is like anything outside of that, which this would have to go through site plan approval and all that fun stuff. So really the only thing that's a conditional use in these areas is, it would be schools, churches, it's institutional essentially. So like the government, buildings, that kind of stuff. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? It's like, okay, the church moves in, that would be a conditional use if it happened to have already the overlay district attached to it. It's very specific. We don't want a lot of conditional use permits in this area. It is designed for this overlay district, and that's what it is to be used for. So. Okay, so yard requirements, minimum requirements in the district are as follows. Property adjacent to the development site is 10 feet. Adjacent buildings 10 feet except for setbacks from the accessory structures, which may be 5 feet, provided fire separation requirements are met. And I believe this is where we came in and did 10 feet at your request. Front yard 10 feet to the porch. In a pocket neighborhood cluster, the front yard shall be the side facing the common space, where dwelling in a cluster also is facing the street, it shall be considered a front yard. So we're trying to, the front yards are essentially facing the community space. If they can't, then, you know, but we've kind of done it nicely that the only side yard setback, except for when there's a zero lot line, of course, is 5 feet, provided fire separation is a requirement, and then street yard should always be 10. So if there's a street yard there, it needs to be 10. I always get that question regardless with street yard and front yard. Rear yard is 10, provided there's privacy between the dwelling is maintained.
Chris,
Yes.
we also talked about garages.
Yep, I got that in here.
So on these pocket neighborhoods, we have to designate them proactively, or does somebody bring them in and say, hey, I want to do a pocket neighborhood? Or because you can't just do them anywhere, right?
No, you would come in and say, I want to do a pocket neighborhood. They would apply for the overlay district. They'd have to go through a zoning change, like a zoning overlay change. They're only permitted in those areas that are residential. So if they come in and go, I want to do a pocket neighborhood and it's commercial, it's not, I mean, they'd have to go through a residential and then do an overlay district. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
I mean, so it could be in an existing neighborhood. It could be on just land that's never been developed if there happened to be a sliver somewhere. And
We do have and I'll get to it, we do have a minimum lot size requirement because we don't want somebody coming in and being like, I have 5,000 square feet, I'll put 22 houses on it. Like, I know, well, you know, crazier things have happened. So we don't want that, but we want, I think the minimum, and I'll get to it, but I believe it's 1 acre.
okay.
So that minimum requirement of 1 acre, which is pretty small really when you think about it, but that's the minimum size starting. So, and then it's you know, you can't get over a certain lot per acre, but well.
What's the smallest cluster?
It's,
6?
is it 6 or 4? I just said it too. Hang on.
I know you did, and I didn't catch it.
No, I mean, I've you know, 4 to 12. 4 to 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that this was used in some small towns in Virginia where they went to like school districts where they kind of pulled like several different little towns together and made like these cooperative. So where like the old schoolhouse properties were, or that kind of thing, hospital things that they pulled together and went to new land to build like the cooperative one for 4 towns or whatever. They put in these little pockets, and they were really nice, and people liked them. So.
As far as the structures, I mean, we're showing basically single-family homes. Can they be, say, I'm going to say prefab, but I don't know if that's the right word for them. I mean, I'm not talking about like a mobile thing. I'm talking about, yeah, yeah.
Well, that's
Because my concern is I don't know if we're going to find a builder that's willing to build a house that's smaller right now, because we're struggling with that anyway. They're either building expensive homes or apartments, and this is a different market that we want.
Then they won't be building them.
and that really could happen. It can. So with the prefab homes versus built, it is actually going back to like state code on this stuff. So I can get in more detail with that. Can I keep going and I'll
yeah,
circle back to that?
And it doesn't have to be tonight. I
Yeah.
think this is gonna be probably more than one conversation.
Oh, man. I'm just kidding. Okay.
We don't
well-
have a public hearing on there for tonight.
Oh,
so.
no, we don't. This is more, yeah. Lot coverage, there's no maximum, but they have to do stormwater engineering and all that fun stuff, so,
I like the shape of them ponds.
oh, man. So,
I had to do it.
Uh-huh.
the design parameters, a pocket neighborhood size, each cluster shall contain a minimum of 4 and a maximum of 12 dwelling units located on no less than 1 acre. And, why do we go 4 to 12? Well, you could have stormwater issues or other things that, could be the deciding factor. Be common space in the pocket cluster. Open space that the commonly owned and managed by the residents of a pocket neighborhood is the key feature, fostering community. I'm going to paraphrase unless somebody really wants me to read the stuff. Minimum of 400 square feet per dwelling unit of common space is required for each pocket cluster. Here we go. Parking area, yard setback, side yard are 15 feet or less in width. Private open space, there is, I swear it's in here because I double checked it. 15 feet or less in width, private open space, driveways do not qualify as common open space. And then this is at least 75% of the dwelling units on a pocket cluster shall abut a common open space. So this really gives me nice, I can come in and go, yes, 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 nope, go back. And I like that black and white of how we can look at this stuff. So, and then it goes into how, let's see, but common space, all of the dwelling units shall be within 60 feet walking distance measured from the nearest entrance of the dwelling along the shortest, safest walking route to the nearest point of the common space. The common open space shall have dwelling abut at least 2 sides. You know what, it is under parking. I remember now, sorry. Okay. Here's more of the open space requirements. Intent, a sense of community, requiring balance, private front yard creates a buffer between the public and private space on a side yard setback. Okay, so I'm not gonna read this part to you, but I'm gonna have you guys look at the screen. So you can see, I like this picture because the darker green space, is there anybody that's colorblind? Okay, so the darker green space is essentially that space for the dwelling, and then you see the lighter green space that becomes the community, and that's really what this area is breaking down. So I'm that's essentially what it's talking about in the private open space versus the public open space there. The next one is the front porches. Covered porch is the key to fostering neighborhood connected. And then we have every dwelling unit shall have a covered porch oriented towards the common space or street. We know sometimes that they can't quite get it. They have to meet those other requirements. The porch shall be open at least 2 sides and it shall not be enclosed. The covered porches shall be greater than 75 square feet in area, or 70, sorry, with a width diameter of 6 feet. The front porch are intended as supplement living space, and then it goes into more of that front page. They shouldn't be used as storage areas. Street facing facade requirements. And you guys, I'm so sorry, this is a lot, but facades of the building requirements, and then all street facing facades shall include one of the following. So in other words, it breaks up the side of the building. This goes into the privacy between dwelling units, which so you don't have windows looking directly into each other with dang near 10 feet between. We don't want that unless they're duplexes or row houses. Are you guys okay that I'm paraphrasing this? Thank you. So this is going into what that common space should have. So it's it could have anything from a barbecue, pizza oven, picnic shelter, tools and general storage, heated common space, and then it goes into other like larger developments could even have woodworking shops, childcare, common like community gardens.
So are these set up like a condo where they pay fees
Yeah.
for that typically?
Yeah, they would need to be.
Okay.
Here's the parking requirements. Parking areas must be located so that the visual presence and minimize associated noise and impact do not intrude onto the public space. Parking requirements are like 1.5 per square feet and then 2 per, and then at least one of the 2 parking spaces has to be attached to the dwelling unit. That's how I wrote it. So like at least one has to be attached. The other one could maybe be in a common parking space. I don't know. If you have a spouse, you guys can fight that out who gets the garage space.
I know how it goes at my house.
Yeah. Yeah, so each dwelling unit shall have 1 parking space attached to the dwelling unit. All other parking spaces shall be located within 150 feet of their entranceway. Detached garages serving multiple dwelling can be located off an access alleyway and limited to 5 single-car bays. Storage, 40 square feet of covered storage space, and then the garbage and recycling where those are located. And then we've got the 3 last ones. I kind of put them all together because it was starting to get to like the really, basic stuff. We've got the fence requirements, pedestrian networking, and then the application.
Question, so on the garbage, is that shared or the individual?
It could be both.
It could be, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I would think most likely it'd be easier to have it shared, like one shared location.
Mm-hmm.
But if you only have 4 dwelling units, do we have a requirement in the city? Do you know off the top of your head?
That's a,
What's the tipping point for that? Do
that's
you
an
know?
A-Bear question.
Okay.
Probably.
I can run that by him too.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Do you have any questions? Is this something you guys want to continue to pursue?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I want to make sure before I just do
Yeah.
it, and then you
So-
guys are like, we don't know.
What would that process look like? I mean, you have all the information here. You have to put it in the ordinance.
Oh, no, this is in ordinance form right now.
Okay.
It's in as an overlay district. I can send it back to, and Rick's already taken a crack at it. So just more of an FYI. I could go back over it with Rick, and then we can come in and do the public hearing and then review, make recommendation to council and go through 2 readings. If that's what you guys want to do, if there's any areas you want me to expand, you just need to let me know. So.
Chris, I think the only thing that, just in my head when I'm trying to do stuff visually, is when you had the second garage needs to be within 150 feet of the dwelling.
I think it's second parking stall, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a garage, but yeah.
Well, or parking place. I mean, I know the ones I've seen, they usually have a group of like garages
Mhm.
or covered holding spaces somewhere else.
Yep.
But according to how many units are in the like if they put 12 in the cluster, that, according to how they do it, that 150 may not be.
Do you want me to increase that?
I'm just thinking the 150 wouldn't.
Okay. I want to make sure there's something in there
Yeah.
so that we
Well-
can be like, we don't end up with something all of a sudden in like Rock County.
No,
Well-
no.
I like the idea of the 150 because of the fact that they're gonna have to be creative in their design, and,
It's just if
it's
they.
gonna keep,
according to
you're not gonna have 12 units and have them all shoved in one corner.
No, but if
You're
you
gonna
have
have-
6 and 6, that's even, could be, if you
usually-
put the parking here,
Well,
Or
or
if
Well,
they're
that's up-
usually
that's up
like
to the
9
des-
feet wide, right?
Actually, you're on the parking one. Can you move like so we can see the whole, that design on the side? Because that's a good
I don't
example.
know if I can.
Well, just pretend you guys can see it.
I don't think that's gonna do
My-
it.
Well,
my
sorry.
point is that I have no problem with the parameters because of the fact that I wanna see creative designs. I wanna see something that's a little more thought out. I wanna see something that's a little unusual. I want to see something that's going to be, that will make people think, and to want something that's going to be of use for them.
Yeah, I just wanna, I wanna see.
I don't want
if
to,
it was an
make it
infill,
easier.
Yeah.
If we're in infill situations, they're working with a lot and trying to create,
Then they're
Housing,
putting
why
putting
not?
too many on it.
I like
Well-
this example up here though. So if you look,
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, so I like the example because you can see the green space in the center, and they have really all of the parking in the rear, and then they have an overflow, I think, parking garage area too, depending on how the house is
do you know how
designed.
large a lot that is, though?
Not off the top of my head, no. But if you look, where I pulled this from was really talking about designing around like stormwater and stuff like that. So that's the good example of that. But like, let's say this is a, 10-acre lot or something, or I don't know. I'm just making up numbers depending, but depending on, the only problem I see with that is I'm not good at backing up, so that could be very disastrous for the house that's directly behind me. But other than that, just
I'm
saying.
not good at backing up
I
either.
know. But yeah, you got to design around what you have, and you got to make it work. So, and I like that I like having all of the requirements spelled out so the developer knows what they have to design around. So that's why I like doing stuff like this and giving really rigid requirements.
What I also like about this is that because of that rigidity, you're not going to have somebody who's going to try to turn this into a sardine can.
Yeah.
That they're going to have to go within the parameters, and they can only get, I'm sorry if you want to have 12 units in a spot, but it can only handle 8. You're going to have to live accordingly.
Right, and I wasn't saying that, Tom, I was just
I
saying
understand,
that
but I'm just-
one unit may not be within 150 feet, and that's why, that was my.
Well, and I
one-
mean, like, however you guys want to word that, but
Yeah.
I want something in there, so, because I know that this was.
Yeah.
This was a problem, and, I'd get stuff and there'd be like, oh, we're gonna put the parking on the adjacent lot.
Yeah,
And so then we had to break down and be like, okay, it cannot be within,
Yeah.
like, it can't be outside of 200 feet
right.
of these areas, so.
So could this road or parking area, the roads coming in here, can they be like private roads? Because I can
Yes.
see with the cost of infrastructure going up for like sewer and water and roads, where a developer is gonna wanna probably have a private road to try to keep the cost down. Because if each one of them has its own sewer and water meter, then that's gonna tally up pretty quickly.
Do you know off the top of your head, well, any of you guys, so really, when we look around town, the one area that could almost fit into a cluster development is the 55 and older that goes down along the, because there's the hospital, they've got the other facility, and then the ridge, steep slope, and they filled in really nicely along there.
Venable?
Yeah, do you know off the top of your head, is that public or private roadway?
Both,
Both?
and Brett could tell you which ones, because they have to plow some of them, but not
Okay.
all of them.
But that, to me, I mean, that really is kind of a foundation of a cluster neighborhood right there. They're fitting around the environment. They've made it walkable. They've added the paths. I mean,
Are basements required in these?
no.
Okay.
I mean,
Because those are the kind of questions the developers are gonna wanna know. On Venable, I think those are all slab on grade there, aren't they?
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because
the
folks that live there probably don't wanna go down to the basement anyway.
right, and I think the water table there probably could be problematic.
So I mean, those are some of the things that a developer might think about, because they're like, okay, probably not gonna make a huge margin off of smaller home, so what can I do to still have a good development but keep the costs down? So I think that's what they're gonna be looking at.
And I know we've talked about this. The one time I required basements was a planned development. I don't need to refresh your guys' memory, you remember this. But I did look into, because it kept coming up, and I looked into it, and it really, outside of the building code. I don't, and I feel weird saying this because it's been like 6 months to a year, like during that process that I looked all this stuff up. But if I'm remembering correctly, there wasn't a lot we could do to require it. I mean, outside of a plan development, right? With that said, there were things that we could do, like the same way that by us adopting shoreline floodplain zoning code, we are eligible for FEMA funding. It looked like there was some things that we could do, but it was more through like commercial code and having like shelters, if I'm remembering correctly. And this is always when I look at Rick during the meeting and go, Rick can tell us, and then he's like, thanks for putting me on the spot. So, but that's kind of what I remember reading, but there's not a lot requiring basements.
Is there an option anywhere in the code to do a partial basement where utilities could go? That we don't have to have them do a full basement?
No, I mean, really, I don't know that we can require them outside of a plan development. I'm sorry that I can't
I just
answer.
didn't know if that was an option
Yeah.
for builders. I've seen that
Could
in
be.
other parts
Yeah.
of the country.
Yeah.
Interesting. So you're working with Rick. If you guys have any suggestions, just shoot Chris an email. Otherwise, I assume you're going to draft pretty similar to what you have in the
Oh,
presentation.
it's drafted. You guys have the copy of it. And this presentation is verbatim from the draft. So I went through each draft with pictures that way. So.
And then we'll bring it back then for public hearing and approval when we have a light agenda.
Yeah.
Might even be next month if you can get the public hearing in time. Otherwise, whenever.
Yeah, I'll try to push it through when we have a lighter agenda. And then I gave you my only copy of my, already gave it away, sorry. So next plan commission meeting, or do you guys want to act on this or anything? Do we need to?
What do you need?
I guess,
I think you have direction to move forward
Okay.
with it and bring it back. The May meeting, more than likely, I won't be here. That's usually the setting of my dinner kickoff. So kind of keep that in mind,
okay.
in case anybody else is going to be gone that night. Let me know so we can make sure we have a quorum and then.
I'll be there with you.
Okay, that's right. So there'll be at least two of us gone, and then somebody else. Al, are you the vice chair? Do you remember? I don't remember. We'll probably have to look that up. We might be reorganizing by then, actually. That might be the reorganizational meeting, actually.
Yeah.
Maybe, we'll see. So yeah, we'll have that going on.
Well, and so maybe we'll push this out into June.
Yeah.
It's
probably
not a
gonna be
rush,
fine.
but
Yeah, and then we'll continue to talk to potential developers, and they may have some ideas too that they might want to throw in here that we haven't thought of based on their experiences. So,
Thank you for working on this.
Oh, yeah, sure.
yeah. Was this paper here for us?
Yeah, so just a couple, I'll talk about the future agenda, but we got that, I didn't print out one, I just got them for you guys, but that has to do with the 51 reconstruction. There's like an open house meeting. I'm trying to get it out to as many people as possible, and I did include it on the agenda, although we got it I think on Friday, so just for your information, so you guys have it, feel free to pass it out to people too, please. Future agenda items, we've got flood storage ordinance update per DNR requirements. It's just a map change. It's going to be really simple. Information on the RDA site. So, okay, so that was uncalled for, young lady.
Oh, my. I've been dealing with that since pretty much I moved into this town.
So here's where we sit, is that I'm not going to talk too much about it, but the developers are gonna come in and present to you guys so you can see it. Right now, it does not meet minimum requirements for the multifamily residential. And they will most likely be asking for flexibilities. And I expressed that we are burning you guys out. And so they're coming to talk to you guys and get direction, right? So that it is not actionable, it is not being noticed, it is informational. Do not shoot the messenger. I don't have my glasses on because I have to read, but I can already see your faces. So, I know. And then we've also got an SIP approval for 2601 Jackson Street. You guys had done this in the past. They are looking to add so it's going from, I think, and next month is falling really weird. So like normally all of my meetings fall the second week of the month, except for this one, which is technically like the second week is the third. Do you know what I mean? Because the first falls on Tuesday, right? So we've got an SIP approval. We haven't gotten that paperwork in, but they have till the 14th. But they were kind enough to be like, hey, we will have it into the 14th if you want to let the Plan Commission know. They're going from like 2 to 4 suites or something like that. And it's at the Kettle Park West site that I think you guys have already reviewed. So I don't see this changing too much. Just an FYI. So, do you guys have any questions about anything going on?
That's a commercial site, right?
It's a commercial site, and then potentially, yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Anything on your mind for future agenda items? So what do we have? Do we have one more meeting before the reorg? We're probably going to be shifting some chairs. You're on my list. So Jordan he's running for council, so he may be on as a council member. Tom and I are talking about maybe Tom switching spots with him. That doesn't mean you have to sit down there, though. You can still sit there if you want. So I think we're going to be pretty much intact, which I'm excited about, unless Brett or Phil decide to, or even Jordan, they could want to be on a different committee.
yeah, sorry, you can't go.
So what I'll do is when we get closer to the election for the alders, I'll send out a survey to see what committees you want to serve on. But I think we're mostly going to be intact. It's been a really productive and busy year. We anticipate the rest of this year is going to be pretty good as well, although I think we've done a lot of heavy lifting already. But there's probably going to be a few more things. Hopefully Riverfront comes to mind. We'll see what happens. But it's been good. Things are moving along. See how it goes. Appreciate everyone being here. Go ahead.
I wanted to add, sort of to, with the Main Street one that they were talking about with the Airbnbs, temporary residential ones on their first floor, second floor thing, if they own that top and bottom part of the building. Maybe get something preventatively in place before something else comes along so that we don't have residentials on the first floor.
It's funny you bring that up. I am currently working on the central business. It's been on my radar for a while now. I actually was doing that today. I think that's why I'm slightly cross-eyed, because like reading these things all day does that to you. The other thing that we're going to look into is we're going to look at an Airbnb essentially ordinance. You know, I think applying that, because it's not clear the way it's written right now in our ordinance, and I want something clear. So just more of an FYI that could be coming as well. But I'll talk with you more offline about it. But yes, I was literally working on this today.
Okay. I just don't want the Main Street to get saturated with that sort of thing, because then parking is going to become a nightmare. Overnight parking is going to become a nightmare.
Yeah, I am. There's not a lot of crosses I'll die on, right?
No.
But preserving Main Street is very, very important, and it's only 3 blocks. Like, so.
Yeah, it's, you know, not to get in too deep, I think there's gonna be more demand for it, so I think we need to be proactive, whatever we decide. My only concern is how do we accommodate ADA accessibility for people that want Airbnb? Right now, we don't have a good way of doing it. So, but I think that potentially on the side streets, maybe,
Yeah.
that might be the solution.
Yeah.
So at least they're able to get to Main Street pretty easily from a first floor, if that's allowed.
Well, and and that's why I was like, well, we can talk more about it offline or later. I mean, it'll come back here, don't worry, like publicly, but right now it's just written as the first 24 feet. It is loose. It was, this last couple weeks has been a struggle. The mayor has seen me in rare form. So that's saying it politely.
It's entertaining at City Hall when the two of us are together.
Yeah, so,
A lot of smiles and laughter. Huh?
Where did the 24 feet come from?
I have no
pretty
idea.
Arbitrary and capricious.
it's, yes, yes.
It is.
I think we need if we allow, and I want to preface this by saying, if we allow first floor residential on Main Street, it is less than 50% and it must be ADA compliant. And that's the only way it's getting passed.
Yeah.
And that is how we've always viewed it in other areas that like a large, if an apartment complex, not apartment complex, but if something moved in, they didn't necessarily have to retrofit the building for an elevator. So, but we can talk more about that offline because it hasn't been noticed. And I'm literally getting into it today. Today I was going through and rewriting it, and it's been on my radar, and I've actually had already started some of it, but yeah.
So that'll be a future agenda item.
Yep.
So, anything else? All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you. Have a good night.